In this video, I'll show you how to work Roosimine Estonian Inlay flat as shown in the Tilluke shawl. So we're gonna get started knitting here shortly, but I wanna just show you the charts that I'm gonna be working from for the little swatch I'm gonna show you on this video. So this shows two charts, a right side and a wrong side chart. As we are going to be working flat on stockinette, we're going to have an obvious right side, which will be the smooth side with our knit stitches, and the wrong side, which will be the purl bump side. Now, the right side chart is going to look like this. We are going to read these charts as we are working flat, so right to left for our right side rows, which are going to be all the odd number rows, and left to right for the even numbered rows. Now, the reason I have these two, all of your patterns will always include the right side chart, which is the side that you're most likely going to be looking at, especially when you're wearing your finished project. This one includes the wrong side chart, so you can see what's happening on the wrong side. Now, all of these stripes indicate the floats we are going to be making in our contrast color. We're going to be knitting every single stitch in these charts with our main color. So with this technique, you're always knitting with the main color yarn, and we're going to be incorporating our contrast color in to make intentional floats. So all of our stitches are always done in the main color. We're going to be, as I said, working this reading for flat, and those stripes are going to tell us where our floats are. In this case, it's really helpful having the wrong side, as I can see that my floats on the wrong side are going to be making a pattern, which is the inverse of what is shown on the right side. So let's get started knitting. Right, now we're gonna get started knitting. So I'm gonna be placing my chart pattern in the middle of my swatch, so kind of in tarja style, and that I'm not gonna repeat it all the way across. So what I'm going to do is just knit to the start of where I want to place my chart. Your pattern will direct you as to where to put your chart pattern. So once I get to where I want to put my chart in, I'm going to add a stitch marker in. That's going to be very helpful to figuring out where I am. Now, you're gonna refer to your chart here, and you want to knit essentially from where your stitch marker is on your needles to the start of the first float in row 1. Now in this case, my float starts right at the very beginning. So I'm gonna grab my contrast color yarn. Now your pattern will advise you, I usually recommend either holding yarn held double if it's matching thickness to my main color, or using a single strand of a thicker weight of yarn. So here I'm going to hold it double, and I'm going to start off, you're going to place your contrast color yarn between the needles, tail to the back of your work towards the wrong side, and the working yarn is going to be towards you at the right side. Now we're going to pick up our main color yarn, and we're going to knit the number of stitches that this stripe indicating our float spans. So in this case, it is 3 stitches. So I'm going to knit with my main color yarn 3 stitches. Just ignore that contrast color at the moment, like so. Now I'm going to take my contrast color yarn, and I'm going to move it to the back of my work, going between the needles. So I'm creating that first float. And then we are going to check our chart, and we're going to knit with the main color only to the next float. So I have 1 stitch in between. Now, when you move the contrast color to the back, it doesn't matter whether you are knitting English or continental style, you want to make sure that when we knit this next stitch, that it is going to come over top my contrast colors. So if I stick my finger here, you can see the contrast color is below, which is what I want. You don't want to see is something like so, where that contrast color is sitting on top. It's very important to have the main color always coming over top. That's gonna trap our floats nicely in place. So I just knit one stitch between. Don't worry about the tension of your float right now. Then I'm going to grab my contrast color, which is attached to the ball, and bring it back to the front between my needles, like so. And I'm going to knit the number of stitches, again 3 here, for my next float. And then take the contrast color again between the needles to the back of my work. Now that is going to be the end of row 1 of my chart here. And I'm just gonna place a stitch marker. It's not so, actually when you're doing this flat, I definitely recommend having a stitch marker at the start and end of the chart so that you can see which are the end points, especially if it's being centered in the middle of a project. So I'm just going to work to the end of my swatch and then turn around and do the wrong side. Now on the wrong side, what I'm going to do, you'll be able to see here that I have one little float which actually matches what's showing on my wrong side chart. That was from row 1, so you can see that matches nicely there. We're going to start off, so I'm going to work to my stitch marker indicating my chart before I do anything with my contrast color. So work in, doing this over some stockinette. So I'm going to slip my stitch marker, and now I'm going to be working. We're only knitting and purling with our main color, not the contrast color. So I'm doing the wrong side row. So in this case, you can double check it, but I often refer to both as I'm doing this. So on the wrong side, so row 2, we're reading both these charts from left to right. So on this right side, I want to make sure that at the start and end of my chart, I've got those 2 stitch floats. So what that's gonna mean is, so I'm at the start of my chart. If you didn't have a float there, you would be purling some stitches to the start of the first float. In my case, I have a float directly at the start. My main color yarn is gonna stay at the front of my work because I'm going to be purling across as this is stockinette. But because I want a float, I'm going to bring my contrast color, which was at the wrong side, so facing me on this wrong side row, I want to take it between my needles towards the right side, and we're going to leave it there so I can make my float. I'm going to knit, I'm going to purl because we're on the wrong side, the number of stitches for that float. So those 2, make this a little bit bigger on the screen. I'm going to purl 2 stitches to make that float there. So 1, 2. Again, my contrast color has been hanging out here on the right side. And then after I've finished that, I'm going to bring the contrast color towards me between the needles. If you're unsure, you can turn that over. You can see I've got a little float there, which is gonna match what I have here. Now I have a space in between here, so I'm going to purl 3 stitches to this next float, and I'm going to leave the contrast color towards the wrong side here. And that's what's actually gonna make this float happening here, shown on this wrong side chart to make that diamond. So I'm gonna grab my yarn to purl. Now, this is also an example. You wanna make sure your main color yarn is coming over top the contrast color because that's gonna lock things in place. So I'm gonna purl 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, like so. And now we're going to move our contrast color back to towards the right side of our work here and leave it there. And you'll see I've got a little float on this wrong side, which is going to help make my diamond pattern. And on my right hand side, it looks something like so, which is going to correspond with my right side chart. Now I'm going to be doing the last float on this right side chart, which is a 2-stitch float. So with my main color, I'm going to purl 2 stitches like so. My contrast color is hanging out on the right side of my work. And now I'm going to bring it between the needles towards the wrong side. And we're going to then, that's the end of the floats in this particular row. So I'm just gonna work to the end of my swatch. And as always, the main thing to remember is your main color should always come over top your contrast color. So as you're purling and knitting across, depending on which row you are, it's locking our little floats in place. So if I turn this to the right side, you should see it matches exactly what my chart is showing for the right side. Slide this across, and then if I turn it over, that's looking like my wrong side chart. So I'm just gonna repeat how to do these right side and wrong side rows one more time, and just to kind of refresh how it works. So on all of your right side rows where you've got your smooth side with the knit stitches, we're going to work to the start of our chart before we move any contrast colors around. So work as directed in your pattern. So that stitch marker, I'm going to slip it there, and then I will consult my chart. You want to knit the number of stitches to the start of the first float in the round. And with our right side rows, they're going to be odd number rows working from right to left. In this case, I don't have any blank squares or stitches to work to the first float because my first float starts right at the start. So what I'm going to do is grab my contrast color, which should be hanging out ready to go. I'm gonna bring it to the front towards me between my work, bringing it from the wrong side over to the right side, and then just let it hang in front. I'm then going to, with my main color, knit the number of stitches for the float I need. In this case, it's just 1 stitch. Then I'm going to take the contrast color that's been at the front on the right side to the back of my work between the needles. Grab my main color, and we're gonna knit to the next float. So I've got 2 stitches, like so. Then take my contrast color that's been hanging out at the back towards the wrong side, bring it again to the front of my work, right side, and I'm gonna knit the number of stitches for the next float. Again, mine, it's just 1 stitch. Then take contrast color to the back once more, and I'm going to knit to the number of stitches to the next float. Now again, always remember when you're moving your contrast color forward and backwards, that main color yarn should always be coming over top and across your contrast color. So I'm going to knit the 2 stitches I have in between my floats here. 1, 2. And then I'm going to grab my my contrast color, which has been at the back of my work towards the wrong side, and I'm going to bring it to the front between the needles. And I'm going to knit with my main color the number of stitches for my last float, so just 1 stitch. And then I'm going to take my contrast color back between the needles towards the wrong side, and that's the end of my row. So I'm just gonna finish that off and work the next row, which is another repeat of how to do the wrong side. So I've now turned over to look at the wrong side of my work, which looks something like this, which is gonna match up with my wrong side chart. You can see here I'm making a little diamond, which matches that. And what I'm going to do first, before anything, is I'm going to work to my slip marker that indicates when to start reading said chart. Now with the wrong side, I tend to use a mix of both, but I still tend to read from that right side chart. So what I'm going to do is, we are on our wrong side row, which means it's an even number. I am on round 4. We'll blow this up here on the screen. So this is my right side chart. And what I'm going to do is I'm reading this left to right, and this is what it looks like on the right side. Now, I don't want to have a float here for those first 2 stitches, which means that my contrast color, which is already on the wrong side, is going to stay there as I purl those first 2 stitches, which if I look at my wrong side chart here, which is making this diamond, you'll see I will have a float showing up there, which is 2 stitches long. So with my main color yarn, we're not gonna touch our contrast color, which is currently hanging out here on the wrong side. I'm just gonna purl the number of stitches that I don't need a float on the right side. And then I'm going to take my contrast color, because now I'm at the start of the first float on this right side chart. And I'm going to take that yarn and take it between the needles. And it's gonna go towards the front of my work. And this is where sometimes you can get twisted. You wanna make sure when you're on the wrong side row, just pull your main color yarn, which you're purling with, just pull it kind of out of the way to the right hand side. I'm gonna take that contrast color yarn and I'm gonna take it between the needles towards the right side of my work, leave it there. We're gonna pick up our main color yarn to purl, and you're gonna purl the number of stitches this float is now going to span. So I'm gonna purl 3 stitches. This is just a regular purl stitch. So purl however you like so. And now we're going to bring our contrast color that was on towards the right side of our work. It's gonna come back towards us facing the wrong side between the needles there. So let's just do that one more time so you can see. So I'm just bringing it from the right side back towards me where I currently have the wrong side facing. And now what I'm gonna do is work where on the right side I don't want any floats. So I have these 2 stitches left to my stitch marker, and I don't want any floats on my right side, but they will show up here on the wrong side chart as a float. So I'm just gonna purl those 2 stitches with the main color. Make sure that's gonna come across your contrast color that's now hanging towards the wrong side. And that will finish off my chart. I'm just gonna work quickly to the end of the swatch so I can turn around and show you what it looks like. So this is my swatch. So this is the wrong side, and this is my right side. Now, if you're ever in doubt, just kind of look basically the way the charts are done for this technique. Your finished thing should look exactly like your chart. So this is the right side. So if you aren't sure when you're doing the wrong side, if it's looking right, just flip it around to the right side and check that your floats are stacking on top, exactly like your right side row chart. If it does include a wrong side chart, like I have down here, you can also compare on there as well, that's matching up image-wise.